Roger Morneau, fresh out of the Navy, meeting up with an old shipmate.
Right, just catching up.
Yeah, seems totally normal. Until it isn't. What starts as just a casual dinner suddenly takes this sharp turn when his buddy, very casually, suggests something pretty wild. The chance to actually speak with Roger's deceased mother's spirit.
Wow. Just like that, over dinner.
Just like that. I mean, can you imagine the shock of that offer? It really sets the stage for this unbelievable deep dive we're getting into.
And what's fascinating right from the get-go is how utterly ordinary that introduction sounds.
Exactly.
Not some dimly lit seance room, not some mysterious medium figure. It's his friend over dinner.
Yeah.
And that contrast, it immediately makes you think, doesn't it, about what hidden worlds might just be simmering right below the surface of, well, everyday life.
Totally. And this wasn't just a one-time ghostly encounter, that dinner invitation. It became his way in.
The entry point.
The entry point into years, actually, of involvement with a secret society, one deeply involved in what he eventually understood to be demon worship.
A world he did eventually escape, we should mention.
Right, thankfully. So for everyone joining us on this deep dive, our mission here is really to explore the most incredible and honestly pretty unsettling details of how Morneau's journey into this hidden world even began. We want to hit the most astonishing parts right from the start.
Precisely. We're not just, glossing over it. We want to dig into the core beliefs, the persuasive tactics they used, and just the sheer audacity of the claims that pulled Morneau into this, well, extraordinary and disturbing reality.
Okay, so let's paint the picture. Montreal, mid-1940s. There's this high-class place Morneau mentions. It was near the Windsor bowling alleys and billiard place, a spot where the well-to-do hung out. Big shots in the dress manufacturing business.
Okay.
Roger's working as an assistant, gets a free night, meets up with his old Navy friend. Just two guys catching up, maybe talking about the war.
Yeah, normal stuff.
And then, boom. Seemingly out of nowhere, the friend mentions he knows people. People who can communicate with the dead.
Right.
And then comes that unbelievable offer, want to talk to your mother.
Wow.
It's the suddenness of it in that setting. It just floors you.
The normalcy is key, isn't it?
Yeah.
It kind of lowers your defenses immediately.
Yeah.
If this had come from some, stereotypical occult figure in a creepy setting, Roger might have just laughed it off or been way more skeptical.
Sure.
But from a buddy.
Yeah.
In a nice restaurant. It gives this bizarre kind of credibility to a totally outlandish claim.
It's you wonder.
It really does.
Yeah.
How many other, seemingly normal social circles might have these hidden layers?
And things escalate fast. This wasn't just about, a typical seance with flickering candles and holding hands.
No.
Roger learns pretty quickly he's being drawn into a secret society, spirit worshippers. And here's where it gets really interesting. His friend tells him, point blank, that once you get an invitation from the higher-ups, the spirits themselves getting out becomes, well, virtually impossible.
Wow. Talk about pressure. In deep, fast.
Right. And to add another layer of this, bizarre normalcy, the friend mentions that a really famous big band leader...
The celebrity.
Yeah, big name in Montreal, even beyond, he regularly attended seances with his wife.
Oh,
so you have this jarring mix. Fame, fortune, glamour, and communicating with spirits. It just makes you question people's motivations, doesn't it? Even those who seem to have it all.
That detail about the band leader is really insightful. On one hand, like you said, it normalizes it.
Makes it seem less weird.
Yeah, if he's doing it. But it also hints at maybe different reasons for getting involved. Maybe the wife was looking for comfort, grief.
Maybe.
But the band leader's comments later, they suggest he was after something else entirely, something more potent.
Power.
Could it be that for some, it was not about solace at all, but about seeking an edge, influence?
Which brings us to this really pivotal moment. After one of these seances, they're at a restaurant, back alley place near St. Catherine Street, busy, but the band leader has a reserved table waiting.
Okay.
Drinks are flowing, and then the band leader just drops this bombshell. He dismisses the seances for comfort, says that's just, what his wife does. He's after power. And he says he goes right to the source.
Right to the source, okay.
Then he says something truly shocking. Luck doesn't exist.
Really?
Only power working for you. And he flat out claims his fame, his success, everything he'd achieved, it was all a direct result of this power.
That's a critical moment.
Yeah.
A huge revelation.
It makes you wonder, what is this source?
Exactly. His open admission, not comfort, but power.
Yeah.
And that he thinks it's the only thing behind his success. It just exposes this darker undercurrent in the group's beliefs.
Yeah.
It moves way beyond just like curiosity about the afterlife. This is actively seeking influence through supernatural means. And dismissing luck as just power at work. That's a whole worldview shift.
It really is. And the revelations just keep piling up.
Okay.
The band leader then claims, according to their whole understanding, those spirits of the dead they thought they were contacting.
Yeah.
Wrong. They are, in fact, demon spirits, fallen angels.
Oh, wow.
But, get this, they still have the beauty they had before they got kicked out of heaven.
So deceptive. A total rebrand.
Yeah, totally. It completely flips the script on who they believed they were talking to.
Well, the idea of demons masquerading as the dead, that's actually a pretty well-established concept in, various theologies and occult traditions.
Right.
And is a really effective deception, isn't it? Because it plays on that very human desire to connect with loved ones we've lost.
Yeah, it's vulnerable.
Exactly. By exploiting that vulnerability, these entities, whatever they are, could potentially gain trust, gain influence, all under false pretenses.
But here's the really twisted part of their belief system.
Go on.
These demon spirits, the band leader claims, they actually believe that Lucifer was just misunderstood.
Misunderstood, seriously.
Yeah. They see themselves as the quote-unquote evil ones in this big cosmic battle, right? Good versus evil. But their take is, they're not that bad.
Wow. That's incredibly casual.
Isn't it? Almost nonchalant about aligning with, evil. It just shows how perceptions can get completely twisted inside a specific groupthink.
Absolutely. By painting themselves as not totally evil, just misunderstood, they make their influence seem more appealing, less threatening.
Makes sense.
That whole misunderstood Lucifer narrative,
Yeah.
it's a powerful recruiting tool. It can resonate with people who feel like outsiders maybe, or who question conventional morality.
Yeah.
It's a way to just completely reframe good and evil and put themselves on what they claim is the misunderstood side.
Then comes the introduction to the master.
Okay, presumably Satan.
That's the understanding, yes. And the high priest announces that the master has very special plans for both Roger and his friend.
The chosen one's narrative.
Exactly. And the really key point here, nobody, absolutely nobody, gets into the society without a direct invitation from a spirit. It reinforces that idea of being chosen, being special, selected for something big.
But as we heard, it also implies it's really hard to leave.
Yeah, precisely. It's clever, isn't it? Creates this sense of exclusivity, destiny, and maybe a bit of entrapment.
That concept of a personal invitation for the spirit world, that's a powerful psychological hook.
For sure.
It gives you a sense of belonging, purpose, makes you feel uniquely valued. And that feeling, being specially chosen, it can just override your rational skepticism. Makes you more open to the group's beliefs, their demands.
And creates obligation.
Totally. If the spirit world itself invited you, how can you say no?
So after all these mind-bending talks, Roger gets invited to a service.
Okay, what was that like?
Well, you might picture some dark, spooky ritual, right?
Yeah.
But he describes it as surprisingly like a church testimonial meeting, just directed at the spirits.
Testimonials.
Yeah, people sharing success stories, how the spirits supposedly blessed them, helped their businesses, whatever. And the worship room itself sounded really opulent, incense, heavy atmosphere. And the priest claimed some objects were solid gold.
Wow.
It's all designed to create this feeling of awe, this tangible sense of power, and maybe even legitimacy.
That deliberate mimicking of church services, the testimonials, the reverence, that's a calculated move.
Definitely.
It makes spirit worship seem less alien, more familiar, especially if you have a Christian background. And the opulence. It serves two purposes, right?
Which are?
One, it reinforces the idea, align with us, get rich, material rewards.
Right.
And two, it just creates this sense of grandeur and power that can be really persuasive, impressive.
But even while Roger's seeing all this, he's feeling some serious internal conflict.
Understandable.
The pull of this promised power, it's there, for sure. But his Christian upbringing is still a strong influence. That nagging feeling that wrongdoing has consequences.
The price tag.
Exactly, that there's probably a big price to pay for this kind of power. He starts feeling this growing unease, this nervousness about how deep they're getting and what the ultimate cost might be.
That internal moral compass kicking in.
Yeah.
And that struggle is so crucial to his story. It highlights that tension, doesn't it? Between the immediate promises, power, maybe wealth, and that deeply ingrained moral framework from his past.
Right.
And that resistance, that internal conflict, is likely what eventually gave him the strength to question it all and, well, ultimately get out. It shows that even when faced with really compelling, maybe even supernatural experiences, those core values can still hold sway.
Then comes this truly bizarre story, demon-assisted gambling.
Okay, this sounds wild.
So the priest tells them, right, time to really trust the spirits, let them work for you.
Put your faith in them.
Yeah. And Roger, he knew a bit about horse racing, so he decides, okay, let's test this. He asks the spirits for winning numbers.
Yeah.
Seriously. And incredibly, one night he has this vivid dream, maybe a trance, he wasn't sure. But he sees the results of 3 races, long shot winners.
No way.
Yes way. One horse, a total long shot, paying 21-1. He sees the board, the number, clear as day.
Wow.
So he goes to the track that Saturday, and there it is. He puts down a bet, wins.
Okay.
Then, feeling kind of reckless maybe, he throws more money on the next long shot he saw in the dream, another 21-1 winner.
He won again?
He did. Walked away with a serious chunk of cash, enough to buy a very expensive suit, like $200 back in 1946. That was a fortune then.
That's a powerful demonstration. Hard to ignore that kind of result.
Exactly. It's tangible proof, right?
Well, this kind of thing, this seemingly direct supernatural intervention, it's a classic tactic for these kinds of groups.
How so?
Providing tangible, immediate rewards money, success, it's incredibly effective for strengthening belief, deepening commitment, the specifics, the exact winning numbers, the big payout.
Right.
That would have been a very persuasive experience for Morneau.
Definitely blurred the line between coincidence and something else.
Absolutely. Something far more intentional from their perspective.
But, this winning streak doesn't exactly fly under the radar in the real world.
Oh.
Roger, feeling flush, tries his luck with other bookies. One day, the guy at the betting window tells him the boss wants to see him.
There we go.
So he goes into the back room. Stereotypical scene. Cigar chomping guy, big desk, gives Roger the once-over and just flat out says, "You don't look that smart."
Right.
Meaning, smart enough to be picking so many winners, especially long shots. He accuses Roger straight up, "You're getting help."
They knew.
Oh, yeah. They admitted they'd been watching him win consistently for weeks, and the bookie gives him an ultimatum.
Which was?
Get out!
Yeah.
Leave all the Montreal bookies alone because someone's going to put a you-know-what in him if he keeps cleaning up like this.
Oof. Reality check.
Big time. A stark reminder. Even with supposed demon help, there are still very real-world consequences when you win too big, too often, in certain circles.
Absolutely. That encounter brings this crucial dose of reality crashing into the supernatural bubble.
Yeah.
Morneau might have thought he had this secret weapon, but the real-world implications of winning like that, they catch up fast. It just highlights that even in, let's say, illicit worlds, there are rules, boundaries, and if you disrupt things too blatantly, you face earthly consequences no matter where your luck comes from.
Now, during these praise services they held,
The testimonial meetings.
yeah, the high priest would also talk a lot about what he called the great controversy.
Okay, the classic good versus evil battle.
Right, the ongoing fight between Christ and Satan. But the way they presented it, it was always about glorifying Satan.
How so?
He was depicted as this incredibly intelligent, beautiful being, radiating light, brilliance, so intense you supposedly couldn't even look directly at him.
Well,
The high priest even told this personal story about being temporarily blinded by such a spirit in Chicago. Claimed he needed the operator to dial the phone for him afterwards.
seriously.
That was the claim. It's all about shifting the perception, right?
Yeah.
Making Satan seem like the truly powerful, impressive figure in this whole cosmic drama.
Exactly. That constant focus on Satan's brilliance, his beauty. It's a deliberate tactic. Makes him seem more compelling, maybe even admirable, compared to the traditional image of, a horned demon.
Right.
By focusing on those attributes, they try to subvert the usual religious teachings, create a different object of worship, of allegiance, and the personal story, however outlandish it sounds, just serves to add this veneer of first-hand authority.
And forget about fire and brimstone, eternal punishment.
Not part of their narrative.
Not at all. The high priest preached a totally different ending to this great controversy. He claimed that Christ, realizing it's a lost cause basically, will just abdicate.
Abdicate his claim to earth.
Yeah. Take his followers off to some distant planet, deep in the galaxy somewhere, and leave Earth to the master, to Satan.
And then what?
Then Satan resurrects his followers, who are supposedly as numerous as the sand on the seashore, for an eternal reign of happiness right here on Earth.
Wow. That's a complete inversion of traditional Christian end times beliefs.
Totally. For someone raised Christian like Morneau, that would be a radical, maybe even appealing alternative to the whole idea of divine judgment.
It certainly offers a very different vision of the future,
Yeah.
one that might appeal to people who find traditional ideas of judgment, unsettling.
A happier ending, in a way.
Well, a peaceful resolution,
Yeah.
supposedly, even if Satan wins, and the resurrection of this huge multitude for an eternal earthly reign.
Yeah, that could be a powerful draw for people looking for a different kind of spiritual path, or maybe just disillusioned with traditional religion.
Then comes this truly mind-blowing claim, Satan's great general council, back in the 1700s.
The council in the 1700s, what was that about?
According to the high priest, Satan and his top spirit advisors held this big meeting specifically to strategize for the future.
The future, the coming industrial age, and the age of scientific discovery that would follow.
Okay, long-term planning.
Very long term. And they supposedly came up with 3 major policies. Big ones.
All right, what were they?
First, make humans believe that Satan and his angels don't actually exist.
Deny their own existence. That's clever.
Isn't it? It's genuinely chilling when you think about, say, modern surveys showing how many people don't believe in a literal devil. Could this be like a centuries-old strategy actually playing out?
Well, that alleged strategy shows a pretty remarkable grasp of human psychology, the power of disbelief.
How so?
If people don't believe a threat exists, they won't guard against it, right?
Makes sense.
So by fostering skepticism about their own existence, these entities could, theoretically, operate much more effectively behind the scenes, influencing people, societies, without facing direct opposition, maybe without even being recognized. It's subtle, potentially very effective manipulation.
Okay, policy number 2 from the supposed 1700s meeting. Gain total control of people's minds.
Right.
How? By taking hypnotism out of the occult fringe and rebranding it, making it seem like a beneficial science.
Wow. Hypnotism as mind control.
Yeah. The high priest even specifically mentioned using regression to past lives as an example of this. It definitely makes you look at the history of hypnosis and how its perception has shifted,
It certainly suggests a long-term effort to subtly influence human thought, human behavior, through practices that seem legitimate, even therapeutic.
Right, like healing.
Exactly. Reframing something with potential for manipulation as a scientific tool.
Yeah.
You could gain widespread acceptance, get access to people's subconscious minds, and mentioning past life regression, which is scientifically debated anyway, adds another layer to that claim.
And the third major policy,
Let's hear it.
destroy the Bible without actually burning it.
How do you do that?
By actively promoting the theory of evolution. The high priest claimed that Satan personally tutored Charles Darwin.
Wow. Okay. That's a big claim.
Huge. The idea was, if people accept evolution as fact, it completely undermines the Genesis creation story.
The fall of man.
The whole plan of redemption laid out in the Bible. It's a direct hit on a foundational Christian belief.
That perspective, seeing evolution as a tool for spiritual deception, it really highlights this fundamental clash between a literal reading of Scripture and, well, the scientific understanding of biology.
They saw it as a major threat.
Clearly, a highly effective way, in their view, to undermine religious faith on a massive scale, and claiming Lucifer himself was the tutor. That adds a dramatic and, from their standpoint, very authoritative spin.
And building on that, these spiritists, they didn't just see evolution as a scientific idea.
Yeah.
They viewed it as a whole religious system.
A religious system.
Yeah, one specifically designed to disqualify people from entering Christ's kingdom. And here's another jaw-dropper.
Okay.
They believe that teachers of evolution actually receive a special unction directly from Satan.
An unction, like an anointing.
Sort of, yeah. And this unction supposedly gives them the power to induce spiritual blindness in their students.
Oh, it's intense.
It gets weirder. They claim these teachers are honored by Satan himself with a retinue, like an entourage, of bright angels.
Wow. That's an incredibly adversarial, almost unbelievable take on science and education.
It really is.
Framing a scientific theory as part of a theological war, attributing supernatural power to its teachers. It just underscores how deep their opposition ran.
Yeah.
That idea of a satanic unction, it implies deliberate spiritual influence, not just intellectual argument.
Yep.
And angelic escorts. That's just a bizarre, inverted kind of divine blessing.
Okay, next topic they apparently focused on, Christian idolatry.
Christian idolatry. What did they mean by that?
The high priest declared this was the greatest deception of all, and he claimed it's achieved through the widespread belief in the immortal soul.
How does belief in the immortal soul lead to idolatry, in their view?
Their belief was that demon spirits actively defile Christian churches through necromancy.
Communicating with the dead.
Exactly, impersonating the dead. And by doing this, they deceive millions of Christians into unknowingly practicing idolatry.
Yeah,
because these Christians think they're connecting with or maybe honoring their deceased loved ones.
Right.
When in reality, according to this group, they're actually interacting with these manipulative demon spirits posing as loved ones.
That is a deeply unsettling idea.
Yeah.
Undermines a core practice, or at least belief, in many traditions.
Totally.
It's a particularly insidious form of deception, isn't it? Because it preys on those really powerful natural emotions around grief, the desire to connect with those who've passed.
Yeah.
So by exploiting that belief in the immortal soul, the possibility of communication,
Yeah.
demon spirits, in their view, could effectively lead people away from traditional doctrines and into spiritistic practices, maybe without them even realizing it, and calling it idolatry.
Yeah.
It's a serious charge, fundamental betrayal of true worship, they'd say.
And this connects to the idea of friendly demon spirits.
Friendly demons.
Yeah. Apparently, these entities actively delight in impersonating people. Not just deceased loved ones, but also famous historical figures.
Huh. For what purpose? Entertainment. Deception.
Probably both. The account even mentions 3 main divisions of demon spirits, though it doesn't detail what they are.
Interesting. Suggests a kind of hierarchy or different roles within their spiritual realm.
Yeah.
Well, the concept of friendly demons is another classic tactic in these sorts of deceptive practices.
Makes sense.
By appearing helpful, benevolent, maybe even entertaining through these impersonations, they can gain trust, lower defenses, make people more open to their influence. Impersonating loved ones is obviously for emotional manipulation,
Right.
while impersonating famous people could lend this false sense of authority or wisdom to whatever they're saying.
And Roger actually witnessed something like this firsthand, what we'd now call channeling.
You saw channeling happen.
Yeah. There was a French historian from the University of Montreal, apparently, who wanted information about Napoleon. So several channels were selected for the session. Roger describes one woman in particular, her eyes glazed over, that classic sign associated with the trance state.
Right.
Then this woman starts speaking, identifying herself as this spirit counselor.
Wow. A direct account of that practice.
Exactly. A practice still debated and, fascinating to many today.
That firsthand observation. It's a window into how spirit communication actually worked or seemed to work in that society. The physical signs, the glazed eyes, believers often see that as proof of the spirit taking control. It's a phenomenon reported across cultures through history, often linked to altered states.
But then the historian makes this very specific, kind of odd request.
What was it?
He asked this channeled spirit to reproduce part of a controversial speech given by the then-living mayor of Montreal.
Reproduce a speech from a living person while channeling someone else.
Yeah. Initially, the spirit, speaking through the channel, refused, claimed it had prior European commitments.
European commitments. Seriously.
That's what he said. But then another spirit was channeled through a different person and accurately replicated the mayor's voice, a voice Roger knew well. He remembered it vividly from his youth, from listening to the radio.
Whoa! Replicated the voice and the speech.
Apparently so. I mean, you really can't make this stuff up. To have that level of specific detail, the voice, the content replicated, it's certainly a compelling anecdote. Unsettling, but compelling.
That replication of a living person's voice, specific content from a recent speech, that adds a significant layer of seeming verifiability to the channeling.
Right. Makes it harder to dismiss.
For someone like Morneau witnessing that, such a specific, accurate demonstration firsthand, that would likely be incredibly powerful, very persuasive, seemingly validating all the claims about the spirit's abilities, their knowledge. It really blurs the lines, doesn't it, between what's real and what might be manipulated or faked.
There was also a significant warning they gave about Sunday
observant.
Yeah. The priests asserted that as times get worse, demon spirits will increasingly push the importance of keeping Sunday sacred.
Why Sunday?
He connected it back to historical sun worship. And the idea was, by observing Sunday as a holy day, people are unknowingly giving homage to Satan, who, according to them, has placed his authority on that particular day. It's a direct challenge to a very widely held Christian tradition.
Wow. That's a direct attempt to undermine the traditional Christian view of Sunday as the Lord's Day,
Totally.
associating it with paganism, with satanic authority.
Hmm.
By creating that link, the Spiritists were trying to steer people away from traditional Christian practices, maybe pull them towards their own beliefs, their own observances. It's a strategy to redefine religious symbols, religious practices within their own framework.
But then here's where it gets really specific, almost grudgingly respectful in a weird way. The high priest actually acknowledged that Seventh-day Adventists could not be deceived about the true state of the dead.
Really? He singled them out.
Yes. And he attributed it directly to their strict observance of the biblical Sabbath.
Saturday.
Right, Saturday. And because of that, they supposedly receive special spiritual help and insight that protects them from this specific deception.
Wow.
He even expressed frustration, said they kind of overlooked the Adventists in their strategies because, well, there weren't that many of them.
That is a remarkable admission.
Unexpected.
Isn't it? It suggests that even within this belief system focused on deception, they recognized the, let's say, theological consistency or spiritual strength of one particular group on one specific point, the state of the dead, the Sabbath. It really highlights the challenge that deeply held, biblically grounded beliefs can pose, even to sophisticated manipulation.
So as Roger gets closer to, potentially being fully initiated,
The pressure ramps up.
big time. They even staged this demonstration for him, took him to a lawyer's room filled with typewriters
Okay.
that were typing by themselves.
Self-typing typewriters.
Yeah. They claimed demons were powering them, just churning out legal briefs effortlessly. It was meant as this tangible proof of the blessings, the practical benefits you get from serving the spirits.
The supernatural legal team. Wow.
Right. It's all designed to impress him, lock him in, solidify that commitment.
That demonstration of, well, alleged supernatural productivity, it's a clear attempt to showcase the tangible perks of aligning with their spirit world.
Yeah, look what you can get.
Exactly. Wealth, efficiency, professional success. By presenting what looks like irrefutable proof of the spirit's power in a really practical setting, like a law office, they're trying to overcome any lingering doubts and just entice Morneau to fully commit.
And then there's the darker side, the more ritualistic stuff.
Okay.
They apparently had a resort up in the Laurentian Mountains.
A resort. For the society.
Seems so. And reportedly, they held live animal sacrifices there.
Sacrifices when?
On the last day of October. Halloween.
Oof. Okay, that adds a definite layer of sinister ritual.
Yeah, it reinforces the truly dark nature of this group he'd gotten mixed up with. It moves beyond just, talking to spirits or getting stock tips.
Right, into active, potentially harmful, definitely disturbing practices.
Oh, exactly.
That mention of animal sacrifices, especially timed for Halloween, connects them much more overtly to, well, occult practices, ancient rituals. It underscores that this wasn't just about some benign communication. There was a darker, more demanding side to their worship. Practices most people would find morally reprehensible.
But amidst all of this, the weird experiences, the gambling wins, the pressure to join, Roger describes this growing feeling, dissatisfaction.
Despite everything.
Yeah. He talks about an internal spirit of God, as he put it, urging him to hold back, just this quiet voice of conscience pushing back against the overwhelming pull of this whole supernatural world. And ultimately, it's that inner nudge, that resistance that becomes his turning point, the beginning of his journey out of this darkness.
That inner voice, that persistent unease, even with all the outward allure and the seemingly compelling evidence, that's often such a critical factor when people break free from deceptive groups or systems.
Yeah.
It suggests that even when you're under intense psychological, maybe even spiritual manipulation, that connection to your core values, your conscience, it can remain. And it can provide a path out.
So as we kind of take a breath here and look back at just this initial part of Roger Morneau's story, it's truly astonishing, isn't it?
It really is.
We've only just scratched the surface of his early experiences in this spirit-worshipping society. But the insights into their beliefs, that whole reinterpretation of good and evil, the nature of the spirits, those alleged long-term strategies going back centuries.
Yeah, the 1700s council.
Right. It's all incredibly unsettling, gives you a lot to chew on.
What's particularly striking to me is how comprehensive and, well, long-range those alleged plans were.
Yeah, the foresight is kind of nuts.
Right. The idea that strategies supposedly cooked up centuries ago were still being actively pursued in the 1940s. It speaks to this remarkable level of perceived commitment and foresight within their belief system. It really raises questions about how enduring certain deceptive ideologies can be, how they adapt across different times.
And that really leaves us with a provocative thought for everyone listening. Just consider the implications of these recounted beliefs, these strategies, in our own world today.
Right now.
Yeah, think about the ongoing debates around spirituality, good and evil, how we interpret religious texts, scientific theories. Does any aspect of Roger Morneau's early experiences resonate? Does it challenge your own understanding of these really complex topics?
It's a good question.
It really makes you ponder the subtle ways that deceptive power, at least as it's described in this account, might still be operating in our society, maybe in ways we don't even recognize.
This whole narrative really compels you to think about the power of persuasion, doesn't it? And the different forms deception can take. It prompts us to question where certain beliefs come from, the potential motivations behind them.
Yeah.
Are we always aware of what's influencing our understanding of the world? And are we maybe as immune to sophisticated manipulation as we like to think we are?
Deep questions. And this deep dive, as truly mind-blowing as it's been already, it really is just the beginning of Roger Morneau's incredible story.
There's more.
Oh, there's so much more. Further astonishing twists, turns, and ultimately his dramatic escape and conversion, which are truly remarkable in themselves and offer even more profound insights into this hidden world.
Wow.
It just makes you realize how deep this rabbit hole went for him and leaves you wondering about the even more extraordinary things that were still to come.